Oh boy, we have a lot going on this overcast Thursday morning in the Bay Area. I'm going to be headed to the 49ers facility in just a couple of hours. Rookies are reporting today, so I get to report along with the rookies, although it's year 7 for me. So a little bit more experienced than them. We also have the NFL schedule release going on today. And Kyle Shanahan, 49ers quarterback mania. Last night, I was at the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event at the California Theater in San Jose. Kyle Shanahan spoke for 32 minutes. The full video is available on this channel, so please be sure to go check that out. I don't think the full video of Kyle Shanahan's 32-minute talk. It was an interview with Matt Mayoka and Laura Britt. It's not available anywhere else except for this channel. So you get the full gist of what Kyle Shanahan said about Brock Purdy, about Trey Lance, and about Sam Darnold, also about Christian McCaffrey, about Steve Wilks, 49ers defensive coordinator, who will meet the media as the 49ers DC for the first time tomorrow. So I'll be back at the facility for that. But we're still unpacking all of that. Check out that video. I'm going to be talking about some of the key quotes in that video because I just went through the whole interview, dissected some of that stuff on Twitter so that you don't have to. And now we can actually parse what Kyle Shanahan had to say without the hysteria that you see elsewhere online. What we're seeing is total tribalism again. People in a Trey Lance camp are just picking and choosing what Kyle Shanahan said about Trey Lance, ignoring everything else or downplaying other stuff. People in the Brock Purdy camp are going in that direction. And obviously, the few people who are on the Sam Darnold camp are saying, oh, Kyle Shanahan likes Sam Darnold more than both of them. Whereas the truth, I think, lies in all three. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. Anyway, NFL schedule slowly being trickled out today. We have news on a couple games. Yesterday, we talked about the 49ers and the Eagles being set for an afternoon kickoff on December 3rd. That is week 13. Well, the Cowboys are coming to San Francisco during Fleet Week. That's going to be epic. October 8th, week 5, Sunday night football. Dallas coming to San Francisco. That is a 5:20 p.m. start for Sunday Night Football. Fleet Week, by the way, those of you who don't know, that's the best weekend and the best week of the year to be in the Bay Area and in the city of San Francisco. First of all, I know the 49ers play in Santa Clara now, but the Bay Area, it's a large metro area. And if you're in town for the weekend, I'm sure you can enjoy what San Francisco has to offer as well. But in the city itself, the weather doesn't get any better than it gets in October. It's like the summer for San Francisco. 75 degrees, sunny. That's why the Blue Angels and Fleet Week, which is a celebration of San Francisco's rich naval history, happens at that time in October. And the Blue Angels do a bunch of cool flyovers. People are hanging out on their rooftops in the city. A lot of people just gather around Aquatic Park or the Marina Green and watch the Blue Angels do the air show above the water. And there's a ton of boats, obviously, on the water, too, because that's a good spot to watch. And historically, the Blue Angels have done a flyover of 49ers or Raiders games back when the Raiders played in Oakland. John Madden had the crap scared out of him by the Blue Angels when he was announcing, I think, a 49ers-Falcons blowout. Obviously, 49ers blowing out the Falcons in the 90s when the Blue Angels flew over Candlestick. They fly at 3 p.m. during Fleet Week on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 49ers-Cowboys is at 5:20 down in Santa Clara, so maybe pregame warmups of 49ers Cowboys will get a little bit of a buzz by, but it's going to be an epic grand finale for a great week and a great weekend in the city. So those are the two games that we know right now. Rest of the schedule coming later today. Cowboys at 49ers, 49ers at Eagles. I know there's been a rumor of Seahawks, 49ers in Seattle on Thanksgiving, not confirmed yet by the NFL or the 49ers. Also a rumor from a reporter the 49ers will host the Giants in week 3. I think that is September 16th. That would be Thursday Night Football on Amazon, but that also is not confirmed yet. Anyway, let's get back to 49ers QB Mania, where the overarching theme is option power. And we're going to get into that because we're going to get into my Twitter thread right now. This is up at Lombardi himself on Twitter. By the way, we have introduced Lombardi herself. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. But yeah, Lombardi herself has an account. She held true to her promise that she made like 2 weeks after we met. She said, if we get married, I'm going to make it a Lombardi herself Twitter account. So that exists. Maybe you'll hear her frustrations with the schedule at some point through that account. So give Lombardi herself a follow as well. Anyway, Kyle Shanahan talked about all 3 of his top quarterbacks at the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event yesterday. And instead of being biased and just focusing on individual lines here and there that seem to prop up one QB and put down another, we're going to take a look at the big picture. So I went through all 32 minutes of Kyle Shanahan's talk and took the quarterback portions of it and found the quotes that really summarize and, help show us and package Kyle Shanahan's thoughts and show us where the 49ers sit on the quarterback issue. So we could start with Kyle Shanahan on Brock Purdy, and we could make this a little bit bigger on the screen. Here's the 49ers thread with key Kyle Shanahan quotes from the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event. On Brock Purdy's return, as long as Brock's elbow heals right, he'll be the exact same guy. He's doing the same drills as all the other quarterbacks are doing. He's just using a towel to throw, but still doing violent motions, still moving. He's just not doing it with a football. As long as there's not a setback, we think he'll be there at training camp. So, I guess we're starting with the nuts and bolts first. Brock Purdy expected back at some point during training camp if his recovery continues along the same good rate that it's continuing at now. There obviously still is uncertainty. Purdy is not yet throwing a football, but that wasn't expected until June, and it's only May 11th. So 3 months after the surgery will be early June. Purdy should be throwing by then because he hasn't had any setbacks yet. What is interesting to me is that he's making, as Kyle Shanahan said, violent throwing motions for that elbow, but only with towels and not with a football. But that, to me, is a good sign, and it is a specific sign about Brock Purdy's recovery that we hadn't had until last night. So that's variable one in the 49ers QB plan. When is Brock Purdy going to return? Can it be for week 1? I think the 49ers have a week 1 to 4 window as their general prognosis right now. They don't expect a firmer prognosis until next month, but signs are pointing in the right direction. That towel reference from Kyle Shanahan definitely is noteworthy. All right, more about Brock Purdy. Let's scroll down to the next one. Here, while Brock Purdy has been out, he has had a chance to study film, study the 49ers playbook. And here is what Kyle Shanahan said. Shanahan on Purdy potentially improving because he's in the midst of a chance to dissect film and the cerebral aspect of QB play during rehab. When he can jump in there at full speed because he got the experience watching it, I think he's going to be a hell of a lot better. That, to me, that was one of the resounding statements from Kyle Shanahan last night. Brock Purdy was already one of the most efficient quarterbacks in all football throughout that 8-game winning stretch for the 49ers last year. It was remarkable, and Kyle Shanahan verified that it was remarkable. Kyle Shanahan emphasized that he elevated the 49ers team. For those who think that Brock Purdy was just being taken along for a ride, that anybody could have done that, Kyle Shanahan doesn't think so. And Kyle Shanahan has watched a lot more tape than people who are opining that. So the 49ers believe that Purdy made them better last year, that Purdy was a franchise-type quarterback, at least in the way that he played over those 8 games. A little bit more on that in a bit because Kyle Shanahan actually said that. But not only that, they think that he can get a hell of a lot better. Again, I quote Kyle Shanahan. I think he's going to be a hell of a lot better. So you already had somebody who was delivering top 5 efficiency numbers for the 49ers last year. And Kyle Shanahan thinks that after watching the tape this offseason, he's going to be a hell of a lot better. That is a strong endorsement from Brock Purdy. Also, notice the first quote from Kyle Shanahan. We scroll up here. As long as Brock's elbow heals right, he'll be the exact same guy physically. So there have been worries that, his arm's not going to be as strong. This is going to affect him in some way. 49ers don't think so. And they also think that from a cerebral aspect, Brock Purdy is going to be a hell of a lot better. So right now, so far, 2 quotes in, the 49ers are very, very bullish on Brock Purdy. That is the simple takeaway that we can take from Kyle Shanahan's quotes. Okay, those are the 2 on Purdy. There's not much else you can say until the elbow actually heals. So why don't we move to Shanahan's thoughts on Trey Lance, which came with the following question. Shanahan on Trey Lance. Quote, "We did expect Trey Lance to be the man for a long time, and I think he still can be. You also don't expect the last pick in the draft to come in and play at that level." So, the 49ers picked Trey Lance at number 3 in 2021. Whenever you do that, whenever you trade up as much as the 49ers traded away to go up and grab Trey Lance at number 3, yes, you expect that guy to be your franchise quarterback. You operate with the information that you have at the time. So 49ers picked Lance. They knew that he'd be a raw developmental prospect. They knew they still had Jimmy Garoppolo, so it was obvious in 2021 that they were going to keep Jimmy Garoppolo no matter what other people on the internet tried to tell you all year. They needed Lance to develop. But they knew that Lance eventually would take over. And he did take over in 2022, but then he got hurt. And then a few weeks later, after Jimmy Garoppolo also got hurt, that's when this truly went off of the script. The 49ers did not think that Brock Purdy, picked at number 262, the very final selection of the NFL draft, they did not think that Brock Purdy was going to be a franchise answer. They're pleasantly surprised that he's on that track after those starts in 2022. But as you can see from Kyle Shanahan's quote, they still believe in Trey Lance. I think that he still can be the man for a long time. But he said, you also don't expect the last pick in the draft to come in and play at that level. So basically, Purdy delivered at the level that the 49ers thought that Lance would be able to deliver at the end of the 22 season if Lance hadn't gotten hurt. So it's a twist in the whole process. So for those people who think that, oh, Trey Lance did something that really derailed him in the eyes of Kyle Shanahan, no, it's more like Brock Purdy showed up and shocked the world and played 8 sensational games, led the 49ers all the way to the NFC Championship before he got hurt. Now that you hit pause on that, and Trey Lance has returned, and Trey only played 1 full game in a monsoon last season. So Shanahan does have belief in Trey Lance, and this is something that's been lost this offseason because people believe every single rumor that they read online. It's just that we haven't seen Trey Lance. And when you talk about trading Trey Lance, well, the 49ers are open to trading anybody, probably anybody but Nick Bosa, let's put it that way. And they actually have articulated that. But the price would have to match the worth that the 49ers ascribe to Trey Lance. And look at the worth that they ascribe to him. They did expect Trey Lance to be the man for a long time, and they think that can still happen. So if there's still potential for that, if they still think they need to see what Trey Lance can actually do, where that ceiling is, because this is a raw developmental prospect, obviously a price tag on him in the trade market would be very high. It would be at a point where no other team would be likely to meet it. Hence, Trey Lance is still on the roster. More on this right here. More Shanahan on Trey Lance and Brock Purdy. I believe Trey would have gotten to a level where he would have done similar stuff as Brock Purdy down the stretch last year. He missed that opportunity, and Brock came in and did it. I truly think Trey can go in and do that, but Brock's already done it, and that's a very good thing for us to have. So here, 2 things can be true at once. People just want to rush off into one quarterback's camp and be fanboy of one quarterback and discard the other. That's not how the NFL works. That's not how the 49ers front office works. 2 things can be true at once. Trey can be held in an esteem by the 49ers that is one of, okay, if we develop this guy, he's going to perform. That's what they thought last year. They entered the year risking it with Trey Lance. They didn't think that Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be on the team until they got him at that discount. So they bring Trey Lance up to speed as the starter. They know they're going to face some growing pains, but they know they have a good roster around him, and they figure that by the end of the season, he'll hit his stride. Obviously, he never had a chance to do that. Instead, they went to Garoppolo, and Garoppolo surprisingly re-signed with them just based on market dynamics. Jimmy got hurt, and then Brock Purdy stepped in instead because Trey obviously was still out, and Purdy basically played at or above the level that the 49ers had hoped Trey Lance would play with a full, half season of development. And that's where the twist came in. So that's where this Shanahan quote comes in. I believe Trey would have gotten to a level where he would have done similar stuff. He's referring to Brock Purdy, but he missed that opportunity through the injury, and Brock came in and actually did that. So that's, you go back to this quote now. You also don't expect the last pick in the draft to come in and play at that level. That's been the great twist in this story, is that, while Trey Lance has been out, another quarterback has actually come in and proven that he can deliver at a top 5 level post Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo obviously not with the 49ers anymore. So I think, it's all fascinating stuff. And yes, you could have a dual track truth that is operating in this scenario. And you know what? With the 49ers, I think that you have a 3-track truth. You know why? Here's why. Let's open it up, because they're talking about Sam Darnold. Even when he was specifically asked about Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, Shanahan referenced Sam Darnold. Read this. We know we have a quarterback who's done it at a high level in the NFL who we can win with. That's obviously in reference to Brock Purdy. I also believe we have 2 more on our roster strongly, but one guy has shown it. So let's see how it plays out. So you have Purdy, Shanahan and Brock Purdy. That's the guy that the 49ers have already won with, who they believe in. And then 2 more. That means Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. So Shanahan's not even asked about Darnold, yet he references him as one of the core 3 49ers quarterbacks. We have a little bit more on Trey Lance before we get on to Sam Darnold. That's just like a little bit of a teaser. Here's Shanahan on Trey Lance. And this actually, I think this is a worthwhile update. This is probably something that we should zero in on a little bit more. But remember that Trey Lance had a hairline fracture in his pinky finger, suffered that when he hit his hand on a helmet against the Raiders in week 3 of the 2021 preseason. Shanahan, he broke that finger and it didn't heal right. Trey spent a whole year throwing without a bent finger, which changes everything, which shows the toughness of the kid. He never complained about it. He just tried to adjust so he could be out there. He spent a whole offseason just trying to rehab his grip so he could throw normal. Wow. That explains so much, doesn't it? Lance gets hurt in week 3 of the 2021 preseason. Jimmy Garoppolo starts week 1. With the 49ers, it seemed like, at least heading up into that week 3 game, seemed like the 49ers were planning to run, I don't want to say a dual quarterback system because that gives off the wrong impression, but they were planning to alternate these guys based on some situational changes on the field, right? We saw it during training camp. We saw it in the week lead up to the Raiders game that they were going to have package play for Trey Lance. And Kyle Shanahan was going to treat his QB room a little bit like a receiver or running back room in which he would accentuate each of his quarterbacks' different skill sets. That essentially went out the window. There were a couple examples of the 49ers using Lance early on. He threw the touchdown pass to Trent Sherfield on the opening drive or the second drive after the Alex Mack, Jimmy Garoppolo fumble against the Detroit Lions. And Trey also ran in a touchdown at the end of the first half against the Green Bay Packers. But outside of those 2 plays, there was really not much cooking for Trey Lance, right? And it now makes sense because Shanahan talks about this. Shanahan talks about the fact that broken finger against the Raiders, which was the inflection point before that Raiders game, everything was moving, it seemed full speed ahead toward the 2 quarterback approach. After it wasn't. Right now you have verification that broken finger was a big deal because it didn't heal. And Shanahan just said throwing without a bent finger, that changed everything. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt against the Seattle Seahawks in week 4, strained his calf. So Trey Lance had to start in week 5, and he ran something like 16 times against the Arizona Cardinals in his first career start. And Kyle Shanahan took a lot of criticism. Well, now we probably know why Trey was running so much, because his finger wasn't healed. So he had a chipped finger, hairline fracture in the pinky, wasn't able to grip the football right, and the 49ers felt that they had to protect him by running. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but you have to give yourself the best chance to win. So you fast forward to now because, this took a long time to get right. Trey Lance spent a whole offseason just trying to rehab his grip so he could throw normal, according to Kyle Shanahan. He came in to the 49ers program last year behind the 8 ball, at least in a slight way, right? Because he had been working on re-gripping the football, rehabbing that pinky grip, instead of being able to focus on a lot of the other stuff that the 49ers needed him to focus on mechanically. So now, even despite the fact that Trey Lance suffered a gruesome ankle injury last year, Kyle Shanahan thinks he's in a better spot. And remember, we talked about it a month ago. Video looked like Trey Lance has a better base, better footwork, quicker release. A lot of people said, oh, you're crazy for thinking that looking at the video. It looks like we were proven right. Kyle Shanahan confirmed that Trey Lance's throwing mechanics are in a very different spot than last year, starting with his lower body. Quote, he was able to get such a better base the last 2 months. I think Trey's the best we've had him right now. So there was an optimistic, vibe about Shanahan's, feeling toward Brock Purdy. I think there's a really optimistic vibe toward his feeling on Trey Lance. And we have video evidence that Lance has tightened up the release. And now we have verbal evidence from Kyle Shanahan that his base is better. He's also mentioned a better throwing release. That was part of the talk yesterday. So I think you got a positive vibe on both Trey Lance and Brock Purdy coming from the head coach. Remember, facts over feelings. There are so many feelings that are based on speculation online. People don't really know how the 49ers truly feel about Trey Lance. But if you actually listened to the team brass, if you actually listened to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, who are remarkably transparent compared to other NFL brass, you'll know the way that they're trending, to know the way that they're thinking with this whole Trey Lance situation. And they think that he still has a lot of that potential in front of him, maybe even all of the potential that they saw in front of him when they drafted him. They think it's still there to be attained. And they're excited that he's fully healthy now. One of the really, really, dichotomous comments that I really liked is, it was a supposedly minor fracture with the pinky that Trey Lance suffered in week four of the 2021 season, but that derailed him for a year. It was a major fracture of the ankle that Trey Lance suffered, but that hasn't derailed him. Now he's fully healthy entering the offseason. It's not as much about what, the severity of the fracture at the time of the fracture. It's about how it heals. The pinky didn't heal right. The ankle has. So now Trey is ready to attack this 2020-23 season. Okay, so now we move on to Shanahan on Sam Darnold. What does Kyle Shanahan think of Matt Mayoko's statement? Remember, Matt Mayoko came out last week and said that Sam Darnold might be the best thrower of the football the 49ers have ever had, and people just had conniption fits. It was crazy. I mean, the internet melted down. Well, Shanahan said, I don't think that's that controversial. And this is kind of what I said, that there's a difference between saying somebody's a good thrower of the football and somebody's a really good quarterback. Mayoko didn't say Sam Darnold is the best quarterback in the history of the 49ers. He said that there's a lot of arm talent there. And Shanahan straight up agreed. He said, I don't think that's a big controversial statement. Sam's an unbelievable thrower. He was born to do that. And then Kyle Shanahan invokes Jimmy Garoppolo out of nowhere. I think Jimmy's one of the best throwers on the planet the way he can do it. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. So people have it all wrong. There's this crazy thought that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have arm talent. He has a ton of it. And all of a sudden now people are like, oh yeah, just because Sam Darnold threw a lot of interceptions throughout his first seasons with the Jets and then the Panthers, he doesn't have an arm talent either. Well, guess what? You don't get picked number 3 overall if you don't have arm talent. Trey Lance also has arm talent. Doesn't mean that the mechanics are fully polished. There's still a lot of improvement that has to happen even from a physical perspective. But yes, electric arm talent is there. And it's there in bigger quantities for Sam Darnold and Trey Lance than it is for Brock Purdy. Darnold and Lance picked number 3 overall. Purdy, number 262. There you have the difference. Just because somebody says a quarterback has great arm talent, is a great thrower of the football, doesn't mean that they're a great quarterback, though. That's only part of the battle. And Kyle Shanahan went on to explain that. There's decision-making, there's leadership, there's, how you process defenses when you're under pressure. There's playbook study, so much. So all Kyle Shanahan wants is physical, moldable clay because he thinks within the context of his system, Sam Darnold can excel because he likes his physical skill set, particularly the way that he throws the football. Darnold can obviously also move well. All right, so we got a little bit more here on Sam Darnold. Check this out. To my point, Shanahan, I truly see Sam talent-wise as a top pick in the draft, just like he was. You watch his whole career, and there's no reason to think differently. He hasn't been in the best situation, so we're glad to have him here. And I'm so glad he wanted to come here. He could have gone to a lot of different situations and probably made a lot more money. That to me, that last line is interesting. So Darnold took a discount to come to the 49ers, but it's a discount with incentives, right? The money can go up to $11 million, which is more than Baker Mayfield is making in Tampa. But Shanahan implied that there was talk around the league that Sam Darnold could go elsewhere, make even more money, but he chose to come to the 49ers. He chose to come to the incentive-based deal. If he chose to come to the incentive-based deal, there was a definite chance, and I've said this all along, there's a definite chance that he's going to have a chance to earn those incentives. Everybody was, not everybody, we weren't wrong here, but the first week when I said, Darnold's got a real shot at this, Shanahan's viewing this QB room as a collective, people are like, no, he's just some outcast number 3 QB. That's not the case. The contract doesn't say that. Kyle Shanahan's comments right here don't say that. And the reality of the 49ers situation with Brock Purdy hurt and Trey Lance unproven don't say that. They still view Darnold as a number 3 pick. They like that talent in the room. They still view Lance as a number 3 pick. They like that talent in the room. And they view Brock Purdy as somebody who's done this for 8 games. So they also like that talent in the room. They have all 3 of these guys. And these are some eye-opening comments from Kyle Shanahan. So then we have the summary comment from Kyle Shanahan. And this is good. Here we go. Ready for this one? Shanahan in summary. I do believe we have 3 quarterbacks, talent-wise, who are all capable of being franchise-like quarterbacks. But that's just capable. Brock's done that in his 8 games. And we have 2 other guys on our roster who we strongly believe can do that also. So there you go. The overarching theme is the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan loves all 3 of his quarterbacks. He loves the potential there. You have to look at this. If you don't have a top 3 guy in the NFL, if you don't have a Mahomes, maybe a Josh Allen or Aaron Rodgers, whatever. If you don't have one of the true elites, the best way to go about business is to stack the quarterback room. And even then, you would want to stack the quarterback room if you could, right, in case one of the elite guys goes down. But if you're still trying to figure it out, then the best way is to give yourself as many options as possible in the quarterback room, right? As many darts and as many throws toward the bullseye as you can to see if one actually hits the middle. See if one actually hits that bullseye. So that's called option power. The 49ers need it from both an injury insulation standpoint. Obviously, they needed that really bad last year when all the quarterbacks got hurt. But they also want it from let's find our franchise quarterback standpoint. Brock Purdy showed excellent signs over 8 games. Kyle Shanahan talked about that. Trey Lance and Sam Darnold are both supremely physically gifted. Let's see how they do once they get a chance within the context of the 49ers system. That's called option power. One of these 3 is going to work out. That's what the 49ers are banking on. Maybe 2 work out, maybe 3 work out. Probably not all 3, probably not 0, right? The truth is usually somewhere halfway in between. 49ers would be very happy if it was 1 or 2 of these guys work out. That's the way that they're looking at this. It's the best possible course of action because you're not just going to wake up and acquire Aaron Rodgers. You're not just going to wake up and acquire Patrick Mahomes. You have to deal with the reality of the situation. And the reality here is the 49ers have 3 guys who they seem excited about. And the fact, here's my overarching point. The fact that Shanahan is excited about 3 of his quarterbacks is incompatible with the rules of social media, which demand full allegiance to one and only one quarterback. People have to sit there and worship Brock Purdy, or they have to sit there and worship Trey Lance, or to a lesser degree, they have to sit there and worship Sam Darnold. Sorry, that's not how the talk and the thought process is working within the 49ers building. They are actually looking at this QB room as a collective, and they're going to let the chips fall where they may. That's the smart way of doing business over the course of this offseason. Some people just want clarity for the sake of clarity, but that would weaken their chances of success in the quarterback room. It's business. And in business, you give yourself options. That's what the 49ers are doing. That is Kyle Shanahan, 49ers Quarterback Mania. Go ahead and check out my Twitter at Lombardi himself, because that's where you're going to see all of this. That's, I mean, it took me a while this morning to go through that whole thing and, just be, just get it to a point where we were able to boil Kyle Shanahan's words down to what they actually meant. And, so you go to Lombardi himself on Twitter. Why don't we surprise Lombardi herself on Twitter? There she is. Margot Lombardi. I introduced her as Lombardi herself. So she promised that she'd make this Twitter. She did. This was like years ago that she promised, but we had to get married first. So Lombardi herself is there now. You can start tweeting her and demanding some of her takes on the 49ers quarterback room. I think surf and turf was the way that she described it in 2021 with Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not sure who was the surf and who was the turf, but Yeah, and her football pun's already good with outkick my coverage. But anyway, Lombardi herself is now on Twitter. So go ahead and give her a follow. And maybe she'll come onto the channel at some point as well. So that's 49ers QB Mania. Those of you wondering about the schedule, still waiting for some more news there. Cowboys at 49ers, October 8th, Fleet Week, Week 5, Sunday Night Football. 49ers at Eagles, December 3rd, Week 13. That obviously in Philly. Kyle said that his wife, Mandy, will not be heading to the game. She wasn't happy with the Philly fan experience. So that's what Kyle Shanahan talked about yesterday. If you want to see Kyle Shanahan's full comments, they are on the channel right now, right here. Exclusive full interview with Kyle Shanahan, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, talked about 49ers Eagles, talked about his wife at the Eagles game last year. I was at the Dwight Clark Legacy Series event. So go ahead and check that out. It is up on the channel. All right, time for me to get back to work, doing some more research on the 49ers draft class. 1:30, I believe. I'll be at the 49ers facility today as rookies report. So much more content coming your way. Everybody take care. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.